Should we take a few more? Who's got the microphone? There was one back there, yeah.
My comment really is about to what extent is the West going to take some lessons from what China is doing in Africa? Because at the end of the day, like you said, what happens is that the Chinese come, no strings attached. And what the West still does, even now, is we will put this bridge there if you do such and such, etc., etc. And I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, actually, from the Western model. And I'm just wondering whether they are going to actually take some lessons from the Chinese way of doing things in Africa, or whether they're just going to sit there and criticize them.
Another couple? Can you put your hands up at so lady there?
It's more of a comment that, as I understand it, about 5 or 6 years ago, the Camões Institute in Macau, which had been kind of in decadence, suddenly found a lot of interest and was because of the demand of Chinese to learn Portuguese. Interestingly, Pambazuca News is available in Portuguese, and so I guess you're linking up with that whole nexus of Brazil and Africa. So in terms of the Indian interaction as well, I would add Brazil. Maybe not the same history, but...
should we take one more question there? Sorry, to make you run around. Yes, yeah.
I'd like to ask you something that nobody has mentioned at all, are the differences between the tribal politics in Africa, which is a frightfully complicated and very important thing. And I wondered actually in China at the moment at any of the universities, if they are in a special department sort of studying the tribal politics in Africa. Because you mentioned earlier that one didn't differentiate very much between African countries, and I think that's a great mistake long term, and that the tribal politics of each country should be studied in depth. That's just a comment I'd like.
Sorry, should we just take the one, there's one more in the far end there.
I'd really just like to make the point that surely the reason why the Chinese have been so successful is that trade is better than aid.
Okay, right, just very quickly to finish up. What, Lindsey, do you want to talk about that, about this sort of question of no strings attached?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, the lady who asked about universities, Chinese universities are full of people studying all different aspects of Africa now, and that's, you know, it's very important, and it's a very vibrant field in Chinese academia at the moment. It would be nice if there was some more the other way around, a lot of Africans studying Chinese and so on. And people talk about, I mean, Winston talked about sort of the cultural issue and Confucius Institutes. Confucius Institutes teach people Chinese. I think it would be wonderful if more Africans learned Chinese, also if more Europeans learned Chinese.
There was something not long ago on television on a program that I think, was it in Botswana, but anyway, there are schools there where
yes.
some children are learning.
I learn Chinese, and that's very important if this is going to be an equal relationship. The lady's point at the back is very well taken, but I think that there's two issues about changing aid, and one is very relevant to what's happening today in the G20 meeting in London, which is are the Chinese going to get more say on the boards of the World Bank and the IMF, because they're going to be asked to give a lot more money to the World Bank and the IMF. And maybe one of the things that would reflect the reality of our international economic system better would be if in multinational aid the Chinese had much more of a say, because that is the reality. They have the money. They own most of America's debt. They are the coming superpower, and their views and their experience have to be taken into account far more. And surely a far better way forward is, instead of rather having this rival, oh, we the Europeans know how to do it in Africa, oh, we the Chinese know how to do it in Africa, surely a much better way forward is through the multilateral system, and much more understanding from Africa, the West and China on how to move forward, particularly on infrastructure, which Africa really needs.
Thanks very much. And Winston, do you want to to add to that as well? And trade, not aid?
Trade, not aid. I think in Africa there is a lot of awakening, if you want. Africans are learning to study the world and understand the world politics, and they know, for example, that Western aid came with many strings attached, and this was cumbersome to try and get projects going. But they also know that the Chinese aid, the Chinese would want bargains and giveaways, which can be problematic in Africa, and so they are now using their position in which a lot of investors are seeking to do business with them, to try and ask, say, Russia to put on the table what it can do, and to ask China what it can do. So there's now more competition, and I think if we are more transparent in Africa, and maybe have forums where investors can declare their interest, and there is open bidding, not hidden contracts, not under the table deals, then it can be a win-win kind of situation.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, 2 minutes each, and then we really must finish. Okay?
China could see the advantage of Macau as a cultural opening and trade opening to the whole Portuguese-speaking world, including Africa, including very much Brazil, because although there are really considerable numbers of Chinese, relatively speaking, who have command of English or French, they do not have many Portuguese speakers, and Macau has been training them and developing these contacts, which I think is very interesting.
And a final word, just on conditionality, which seems to be becoming a dirty word. I'm sorry, I'm a British taxpayer, I want conditionality a lot. If you've read Michaela Wrong's book about corruption in Kenya, you'll know how much that elite that own and run that country stole. I don't want my taxes stolen. And that's what I want conditionality. The second condition I want, though, is that the Africans are in control, that this is what is good for Africa. That's the second condition I want. And if there are conditions in there which are not good for Africa, but good for British companies, and I don't think any British aid is conditional on that these days, then I don't want anything to do with it. So in that sense, absolutely right. The main condition has got to be, this is good for this country. The problem has been, and here I quote Chukwuemeka Chikezi, who runs AFORD, that African governments have been very weak in negotiating and arguing with the donors, partly because they're actually benefiting hugely personally from some of these deals. And that the only government that I know in Africa that comes to the table with a very clear agenda about what they want is Ethiopia. The others will sign up to anything and not deliver. And I think this is a really crucial point that is being missed. But I think that China's very presence in Africa does give African governments an alternative, and that's given many of them confidence to push back against the Western donors in a good way and saying, no, we want this, not that. And that, I think, is a very positive development.
Thanks very much. Sorry to cut you short on those who still wanted to answer questions, but we have overrun already. It just remains for me to thank all the panellists for what I think was a really illuminating, fascinating discussion, and to remind you that Richard's book is on sale, £5 off at the back, and also I think your book as well is on sale in the bookshop.
Yes, that's right.
For those who want to find out more.
Today's meetings.
Overall. And also to remind you about the Orwell Prize and there's a lot of debates coming up. There's one this afternoon on Afghanistan and throughout the week, and also to look on the web if you want to see the other events being filmed. Many thanks.